From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
Welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. This is your weekly podcast about consumption. With me this week is the authority on Michigan craft beer and the host of the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. He looks thrilled to be here. Sean, how are you doing today?
I am thrilled to be here, John. How are you today?
You know, no one can see that thumbs up.
It's a middle finger. I'm good. How are you today, John?
I need to get my eyes checked. I'm pretty good. What have you been up to?
Not too much. Consuming some content. I watched The Stranger on Netflix, not to be confused with The Watcher on Netflix. This is The Stranger.
I feel like the two are related.
I know. That's when I started watching, my wife said, this doesn't have anything to do with The Watcher, right? And I'm like, no, I can't remember the guy's. Let me look up what the guy's name is. Did you ever see Warrior? Not The Warriors, but Warrior, the Tom Hardy.
Yeah. It's like a UFC boxing type movie or something like that.
Who's the guy that he's his brother?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't watched that in a long fucking time.
That guy is in it.
Okay.
That's super descriptive. Let me look it up real quick.
He's good, that guy.
The guy that
he's in that thing.
Stranger. Joel Edgerton. That's who's in it. Joel Edgerton, who for some reason, like I can see his face and I can never remember what his name is, but it's an Australian movie. I didn't know Joel Edgerton was Australian because I've never seen him in anything where he uses his regular accent. It's always like he's an American guy. Yeah. It's okay. He's like, I'm not giving too much away, but he's like an undercover agent who's trying to figure out if this guy did a crime that he's accused of doing or that he was accused of doing. It's interesting. It wasn't super action-packed. I just expected it to be more of a kind of a crime drama. And it wasn't, I mean, it was a little bit, but it wasn't super exciting. There's not like a lot of action that happens. It's just kind of, it's a little unsettling, but it wasn't anything really out of the ordinary. You know, it wasn't great, but it wasn't awful. And then I watched this other thing on Tubi, documentary. I was looking for documentaries. I was looking for the one that you recommended a couple episodes ago about
the straight to video one.
Yeah, I couldn't find it. What I did find is Where in the Hell is the Lavender House, the Longmont Potion Castle story. I don't know if you're familiar with Longmont Potion Castle.
It's a very long title.
Yes. So Longmont Potion Castle is a guy, and he's kind of like, he started, I think, in the late 90s, and he's kind of like a Jerky Boys, maybe early 90s, where he makes like prank phone calls to places, and there's a lot where he has these celebrity phone calls, and he asks, it's really surreal. He'll do things where he'll run his voice through like a modulator, or he'll sample people while they're talking to him, and he'll play them back on the phone, and it kind of skeeves him out. There's one where he called Sidney Poitier, and nobody knew it was Sidney Poitier until like recently, and he was like, "Yeah, UPS here."
The dad or the daughter?
Is the daughter named Sidney as well?
Yes, spelled differently though.
Oh, this is the dad, the classically trained Sidney Poitier. But he's like, "Yeah, I got your..."
His daughter's a pretty good actress too.
"I got your ton of millipedes or whatever. Do you want me to just leave them on the loading dock? Are you going to sign for these?" And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." I guess there's 16 volumes at the time of this movie. I think it was 2019 the movie was made. There were 16 volumes of different prank calls, and I don't know how many there are now, but it sounds like the movie, they're trying to like weave this. It is a documentary, and they're trying to weave in this like extra narrative about like the mystery of tracking this guy down, but they actually interview all these musicians and stuff, some more noteworthy than others, about Longmont Potion Castle. And yeah, it's entertaining. It wasn't, again, it kind of started to lose me with all the extracurricular, you know, trying to be fancy, trying to be like artsy fartsy kind of stuff, where they could have just done the documentary about his calls, the people that were influenced by him.
Too many star wipes.
Just too much. Like they follow this whole storyline about these two directors. They kickstarted this movie and they got all this money, and then they say that they blew all the money trying to track down all this stuff. There's like little segments. It's only maybe like a minute of the movie, maybe actually about 3 minutes total, where they're like, "We're in Norway, we're in London, we're in so-and-so." And it's just like one of the directors and the other guy's behind the camera. And it's just these little interstitials where it doesn't have anything to do with them finding the guy, where they knew where he was all along. So it's just, I don't know. It was interesting, but I don't know if I need to watch it again. It opened me up to Longmont Potion Castle material, and maybe if that's what they're aiming to do, then success. But I thought it was just kind of like they probably could have cut about 45 minutes out of the whole thing and called it a day.
I don't feel myself wanting to go back to documentaries in general for a second watching very often. Maybe I'm dumb, but
I've got a few that I really like. I like King of Kong. I could watch King of Kong like all day.
I got a few that I really like, but I don't really ever find myself going back to them. Maybe I'm weird.
Nah. I mean, if it's super interesting and you feel like maybe you missed something, I could see going back to it, but otherwise, you kind of did it. You know the hook.
Yeah. It's not like I feel like most of the documentaries I watch, there's not like a lot of spoiler type things come. Like, I don't feel like most of them drop like some bombshell on you. And when they do, it's like some Netflix thing. And half the time I question if that's even an accurate bombshell or something like that. But
well, it seems like every documentary these days tries to have some twist or bombshell. You know, it's not just some. I think you might watch a lot of documentaries. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you watch a lot of documentaries that you know the subject.
Generally, I at least know of the subject.
Yeah, I think nowadays there's so many that are centered around true crime. That seems like that's a huge documentary staple these days, and everything is.
I'd say understandably so. I mean, for all the things I shit on about true crime, like there is a lot of interesting stories to be told there, and whether there's a true aspect to it or not, well, I guess it would help if it's going to be true crime, but I digress.
Fake crime.
Well, I mean, a lot of these like like I've brought this one up several times, but having not watched it, I'm willing to bet the Dahmer miniseries takes quite a few liberties in the 10 episodes or however many it is, or what was the other one? Mindhunters was a documentary type show thing. I don't know the whole story, but I'd be willing to bet that there's liberties taken in that as well to progress the story and make it more of a show as opposed to a straight documentary.
Yeah, I feel like Mindhunters probably was a little bit more of a drama, whereas the Dahmer thing tries to be a little bit more accurate. Like you said, liberties were taken, I'm sure. But, it's like when you watch something, I don't know how often you watch Dateline or 2020, the classic.
I don't anymore.
Broadcast. But you know the format. They tease the thing, and then they tease it for the entire hour. Now, I think Dateline in 2020, Dateline, I'm pretty sure, is now like a 2-hour show. It's every Friday from 9 to 11, I think.
Just how I want to spend my Friday, learning about whatever housewife got murdered. So.
Exactly. But they have to keep teasing you that hook that whole time. And I feel like documentary filmmaking has started to kind of take on that same feel, whether or not it is, well, I don't know. It seems like there's so much that's produced now. Like not to sound like back in my day, but when I really enjoyed documentary, it was when there weren't that many. And now it seems like everybody makes a documentary and it's about something.
Seems like ever since Bowling for Columbine, that just opened the floodgates to all these different levels of documentary.
I feel like it's been with the boom of having good equipment like available to consumers.
Well, that too.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd necessarily put a movie on it, but
well, there's a lot more mediums to be able to get your product out there too. And maybe not all of them are as big as others, but you're not trying to put, what is the title that you watched again?
Where in the hell is the Lavender House, the Longmont Potion Castle story?
You're not trying to put that in a movie theater, Yeah. So
yeah. I mean, I think, like I said, I think it was kickstarted. So yeah, they absolutely. I don't think there was ever any idea that they were going to put it in theater. So it's like, yeah, we'll make this thing and we'll just send you a DVD when we're done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, throw it on YouTube or throw it on
Tubi,
whatever. Tubi, yeah. Anything else that you caught up on this week?
No, that's pretty much it. We had Halloween, pulling back the curtain. The Halloween holiday just passed, and nothing else really newsworthy or noteworthy. Oh. Played a shit ton of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. That's what else occupied my time.
Not my thing.
Yeah, I know you're 360 no scoping.
I know we can get on the show to talk to you about that. Yeah, so with the Halloween theme still, I tried going, I don't know if you've seen the advertisements for it, but they've been advertising the hell out of the Polony show on Hulu over the last month or so.
The Bologna show?
Might as well be. Polony with a P.
I thought it was about my favorite lunch meat.
It doesn't have a first name. This show is fucking terrible. Like I I don't know what happened to animation. It's not even the animation. The animation's fine. It's kind of like animated, similar to like a Rick and Morty type style of animation. But the voice acting in the show is so bad that I only made it about 20 minutes before I just got annoyed as hell with it and had to turn it off. Like, why is every character screaming but not screaming at the same time?
It's probably because of Rick and Morty.
It's so, I've never watched more than maybe 10 minutes of Rick and Morty collectively over their run. So is that their style?
I don't know. I think I've noticed that too, just across animation in general. I don't think it's necessarily like a Rick and Morty effect. I feel like Rick and Morty's contribution to popular culture these days is more of, it's kind of like the Family Guy model where we try to reference things and we're going like, we're playing like 4D chess, basically. There's stuff going on so deep that most people don't even catch most of it or find it amusing. They have a good way of making it funny.
Yeah, well, this did not make with the funny. This just made with the stupid, and I turned it off. I had a couple things I turned off this week. Not on next. I mean, after that, I tried to get through Bodies, and I wouldn't say I quit on it. I just kind of fell asleep on it, so I haven't gone back to finish it yet.
Did they hit the floor?
One did. Maybe two. One or two did. I don't know. Right around there. It's not as bad as I had thought for where I'm at so far on it, but there's still plenty of time left for it to fuck itself up. Then past that, I just kind of went back and watched a couple classics, watched Monster Squad with the wife and the original OG Ghostbusters, which you can go back and hear our thoughts on Monster Squad if we want to go over that. I don't think we need to rehash that, but someday there'll be a Ghostbusters episode, I'm sure, because that's one of my all around favorite movies. So those are always good to kind of revisit around the holiday. Then this will be old news by the time this episode comes out, but I couldn't really ignore it. Did you see the big announcement that came out on Halloween?
No, I have no idea what you're talking about.
The Peacock announced that they are making a Crystal Lake Friday the 13th prequel series directed by Brian Fuller, who did that show Hannibal, and he did another show too.
Fuller House.
And it is, yes, Hannibal, Fuller House. And it is being produced by A24. So it's all these things that I'm like, don't like that. Okay, maybe. Really don't like that. So you already know there's going to be no Jason in this series. I really don't know where this, I mean, I'll give it a try because it's Friday the 13th. But man, if I have my expectations set low for Halloween Ends, my expectations are like through the ground in the cellar for whatever this prequel series is going to be.
Well, with it being a prequel, I really want to call it a prequel, but with it being a prequel,
there might as well.
There couldn't be Jason in it anyways.
I mean, I guess there could be.
Well, it could be a little kid.
Yeah. Well, I guess the reason why there's no Jason in it is because of the Weagle battle that's still going on. That's why there's no. But
yeah, but if it's a prequel,
if this turns into like a weekly, like Who Did It, like just Camp Slasher type show where they switch it up every week, I could be okay with that. If it's just following Pamela Voorhees around killing people, well, we already know she did it. I don't know that that's going to be a good show. And I really don't know. I have, like I said, low expectations. It's a ways away. I'm sure I'll find reasons to be upset about it later. But this news came out yesterday right around dinner time. And I was like, what the fuck? Why are you telling me this now?
They're just going to remake the classic early 90s Friday the 13th TV show. Yeah, with Roby. Roby will be in this one.
Yeah, that'll go as well as the Nightmare on Elm Street TV show.
Yeah, Freddy's Nightmares or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I only remember the episode where they're running track and the finish line is like a razor wire or something and the person's head flies.
That shows, or it was, I don't know if it still is, that was on Tubi as well, if you really want to go back and watch, not the Friday the 13th one, the Freddy's Nightmares, but did not age well. I put it on like kind of half drunk, like, oh, I haven't watched this in forever. And I was like, I remember why I haven't watched this in forever. This is not good.
I have fond memories of the Friday the 13th TV show and Freddy's Nightmares or whatever it was called. Not so much that one, but only because of when it came on. You know, I didn't have cable. I was a younger kid. I don't think I was I may have been a teenager, just became a teenager. And being on, channel 50 here, syndicated TV show or syndicated TV channel just seeing it came on like around when Tales from the Dark Side came on, went and had that creepy Monsters came on. Those shows, I think Friday the 13th came on even later, and they were just like, oh, I'm going to stay up late on Saturday and watch these creepy shows.
Right. They did a whole book series around that show too, didn't they? Friday the 13th.
Oh, maybe.
I think they did, because that was around the time that R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike were doing their like teenager creep.
Oh, like
books.
Goosebumps.
I think that. Yeah, but they had one that was like aimed towards Goosebumps was aimed towards like little kids. Like there's another one that was aimed towards like young teens. I think that's around the time when they did the Friday the 13th book series, which I never read any, because at that point I had already found the movies. I was like, fuck this book. But yeah, past that, I mean, I just kind of putz around, watch the Lions lose, which is the evergreen content. No matter what week we're talking, that's always relevant. Pretty much it. Watch Michigan State get their ass beat, which is becoming a evergreen statement for this season. So what are you going to do? We want to get into our topic?
But we do have a topic this week.
We do have a topic this week. If for some reason you did not read the title of this episode, we're going to talk about the 1981 movie Escape from New York, which is directed by John Carpenter, starring Kurt Russell, Lee Van Cleef, Ernest Borgnine, and a slew of other people that I'm sure we'll talk about more here. This movie takes place in the distant future of 1997, when the U.S. president crashes into Manhattan, a now giant maximum security prison. A convicted bank robber is sent in to rescue him. That's the very short plot on the IMDb page. This movie is currently up 85 spots. It's the 1,239th most popular movie out of question mark. I don't know. What's your synopsis on this before we start going too far?
I wrote like a real quick, short, dirty thing, and it was kind of a short and dirty, just like my dick. Kind of, same kind of deal. I
Can't say that with a mouthful of water.
Well, I can. You can't. In the far-flung future of 1988, because that's how the movie, they give you the little backstory, crime rises in the United States by 400%. It's decided that Manhattan Island will become a prison and a containment wall built around the island. And every way into the island is mined with encampments and mined, literally. The prisoners set up their own society. 1997, Snake Plissken is a convicted bank robber, or Federal Reserve robber, I guess. He is sent in to rescue the president.
That scene got cut.
Yeah.
So
rescue the president in 24 hours. Actually, he has less. He has 22 hours. Because he has like a tape that has a cassette tape that has someone talking about nuclear fission or something along those lines. And
yeah. A cassette tape that is loosely handcuffed to his arm via briefcase. And yeah.
The president is Donald Pleasence, who is fresh off, not so fresh, but he's just off another John Carpenter vehicle.
He looked like he beefed up quite a bit for this movie. Like, not the kind of beef like you would expect. Like, he's not all like ripped and, buffed out. He looks like he was feasting a little bit on the Halloween royalties.
He was eating pumpkin pie.
To me. Pumpkin pie. Yeah, that would work. I don't know. One of the things that really sticks out of this, and this is probably just being a Carpenter fan in general, or a fan of movies in the 80s in general, is this cast is pretty damn amazing. We got, like we said, we got Kurt Russell, who, as far as action movies go, and this is his first action movie, but he's, in my opinion, one of the all-around best for this type of role. Lee Van Cleef is great in this. Donald Pleasence is always a joy to see. You have Chef making an appearance. The only thing he doesn't do is walk into a city full of gangsters and go, "Hello there, children," which would have been great. But I guess this predates that. Of course, Tom Atkins is in this movie, and any movie with Tom Atkins. We mentioned at some point, this episode might or might not come out before that one, that if you have a movie that's under an hour and a half, it automatically starts at a 5 on the hot dog scale and can move from there. I think if you have Tom Atkins in a movie, it automatically starts at least a 5.5 and can move from there. You get an extra half a point just for Tom Atkins being in your movie. Fair?
Yeah, I'd agree. I'm a big fan of Tom Atkins.
So you also got Adrienne Barbeau in this, which, if I remember right, wasn't she married to Carpenter at the time when they made this movie?
Yeah, she may have been. She's one of the actresses in his stable. She was in The Fog.
And she was in a couple others too.
Yeah, but I mean, that was like immediately the most previous Carpenter movie, I think, was The Fog.
And then you get little insane, crazy characters in this, like Romero, played by Frank Doubleday, which is a stupid name, but just little bizarre creeps that are sprinkled through this movie and done really well for the maybe minute of screen time they get kind of collected through the whole movie, if that, for some of them.
Yeah, we can't forget Harry Dean Stanton. I mean, come on, he plays Brain.
Did I forget him?
Yeah.
Oh,
and Ernest
shit.
Borgnine, in my opinion, is always a mark of quality on a movie. He's
I would agree
very
with
picky
that.
about his roles. So
Yeah, it's almost weird seeing him in a movie like this. It's very off character out of character for him, but it works really well. Where do we want to go from here with this? Like, do we want to just kind of jump into story or jump into positives, or how do we want to pursue this wacky movie?
yeah, I don't know if there really is much. I mean, the story is pretty much the synopsis. I mean, Snake Plissken is sent on a mission to go recover the president. I mean, it's really very much
It's basically
that.
Bad Dudes, the movie.
Yeah, for the most part. What do you think about the special effects in this?
I think they're actually really well done for the time when the movie came out. And I think it's a movie that did a really good job of kind of holding back just enough to know what would. I think when it comes to special effects, you're never going to totally know what's going to hold up in the future. You can't future proof a movie. But watching this in the last week, obviously it doesn't look like a movie that was shot in 2022. Like it's not all CG or it's not super vibrant or anything like that. It's almost grim and grimy the whole time as a result of it. But the effects hold up. It's almost like they knew just how far to push the effects so that when you watched it in 10 years, it wouldn't look like a total cheeseball movie.
Some of the effects, I don't know, I wrote that I thought, like, at the time, they were probably pretty good. And a lot of it you can tell,
sure.
like looking at some of the scenery, the backgrounds, you can tell, especially at the beginning of the movie or anything where they show New York, like a skyline, it's obviously a matte painting. They have parts that are really, I don't know. I thought I literally laughed out loud when the glider, they're trying to escape and the glider falls down and it just does that little spin. I thought that was hilarious. That was the best. It looks so horrible, but I think that the way that it's filmed, the effects, Carpenter, I think of John Carpenter as more of being maybe a horror director. And this movie, the effects are just like the sets or the backgrounds just have almost a horror element to them. It's very dark. There are things in the background that you can't really see. You never know who's like lurking in the shadows. The crazies could be back there. They could be coming out of chock full of nuts coffee place and, want to, I don't know, do bad stuff to you.
What's interesting about you mentioned that it's a very dark movie, and it is. Like, this whole movie takes place at night. There's very few scenes where there's actually a light in the room other than like a trash can on fire or something along those lines, maybe a half-lit street light. What's surprisingly well done on it is, although it's so dark and brooding in a lot of ways, there's not a lot of detail that you miss as you're kind of following Snake through the city. Like, you still see little bits of grime, little bits of, drunk bum face down in the street, random just fucked up things in the background still manage to pop out, even though being a movie that's total, like we talked about Hellraiser a couple weeks ago, and that movie is a very dark movie in a lot of spots. And we both said, like, it kind of looked like you had to fuck with your TV to kind of get things to pop up. Never had a problem with seeing anything that was hidden or tucked away in the shadows. And it's very well lit in the sense that it's still dark, but still manages to get the detail that I'm assuming they were trying to pull up.
I feel like if you took this movie and you turned the brightness up on your TV or the contrast, you just wouldn't see anything. You're seeing what you need to see, and that's what they want you to see. I think that, like I said, it has kind of almost a horror vibe to it, but it's got a particular set of grungy that John Carpenter can do. I don't think anybody else can do that, can pull that off like he does.
Well, it's a common thread for really the thing that I think Carpenter does with all his movies that makes him so great is just getting across mood and ambiance and just kind of really pulling you into not the scene, but like just this weird vibe. Whatever he's trying to put across, like when, again, we haven't talked about this movie yet, but like when I watch The Thing, I feel like I need to go put like a jacket on because I feel like it's just so like frozen and cold, and it manages to come through with what you're watching. With this, thankfully, I don't feel like I have to put a jacket on, but it almost makes me feel like I need to sit there with a knife right by just in case someone jumps out and I have to, fight myself out of it.
Tell your wife to stay in her bedroom.
Yeah, well, there's a lock on the outside of the door for a reason.
I got a knife.
Right. There's other things with this too. Like obviously Carpenter's got a million things that he does well. And we've probably gushed about him on this show more than any other director to this point. Like any other Carpenter movie, the score in this is, in my opinion, is awesome. It's very, very, very dated in 80s and like super heavy on the synth and the synthesized keyboards and whatnot, but it works. And it works for you mentioned the effects and the glider. And are you talking about the glider when you said when it spins out, not when it cuts to like the 1991 like flight simulator program or something like that?
No, specifically when it falls off the building and it does this little twirl. You almost expect to hear some like, I don't know, asteroids or some kind of like Space Invaders sound effect come in when it's like falling from the sky.
And the soundtrack that he does, or the scoring that he does for this, would almost lend to that. It's weird, like not being a video game guy, like there's a lot of aspects to this that feel like you're pushing through a video game, and the score is almost a video game like score in each room that you're going in. He's just kind of going in, clearing it out, and moving on to the next boss fight or whatever. Yeah,
the movie does have a lot of, we talked about it with the Warriors. It has a lot of that feeling of, this is pre most video games, right? We're talking 1981 is like, I think that's even before Pac-Man. So it doesn't have, it doesn't have that,
but
the
70s.
Pac-Man?
I thought it was like 79.
No, I think it's 82.
Go on, I'm finding it.
But it has that same kind of feeling as the Warriors, where it's like clearing out a level, moving on to the next thing, clearing out a level. Has this kind of brawler feel to it, and you meet these characters along the way, like Brain and Maggie, Harry Dean Stanton, and Adrienne Barbeau. We meet characters like Cabby, which is Ernest Borgnine. You meet these little NPCs along the way, but Snake Plissken is always the center of attention. The thing that I found kind of, I don't know, interesting, I mean, kind of going back to the video game thing, if you've ever played Metal Gear Solid, you can tell Solid Snake is and Hideo Kojima has said, the director, the creator of Metal Gear, Snake Plissken's like a direct inspiration. You can feel it because there's the scenes in particular when he's in the glider and they have the light on before he takes off. If they have that red light behind him and the blue lights or the other lights like on his face, that looks like a codec from Metal Gear. Like it looks like directly out of the game.
So by Price is Right rules for trivia purposes, I won on this one. May 22nd, 1980 is when Pac-Man came out.
Oh,
it's closest without going over.
Okay, I'll give it to you.
What would you call this genre of a movie? Like, how would you describe this if you were getting someone to watch this?
I would almost,
because it's listed as an action adventure sci-fi.
I think that's pretty fair. I was definitely going to say action, definitely going to say sci-fi. I get the adventure vibes because it is like that journey. You're going through that point A to point B to point C. There's these twists and turns along the road. I would say like Indiana Jones would be more of an action adventure. So I feel like it has some kind of elements. I mean, he's trying to get to the MacGuffin, which is the president, to get to the tape. He needs that to get his freedom. He gets injected. Snake gets injected with these little capsules that after 24 hours will basically, his head will explode or his arteries or whatever will burst and he'll die.
There's part of me that wishes we would have got to see that.
Yeah, to see how they would have handled the effects.
Right.
Would have been like, what's that movie? I think it's a John Carpenter movie.
Scanners?
No, Christy Swanson, she throws the basketball and hits the...
Oh, I've shared that. I can't think of what it is.
Secret Friend.
Yeah.
I would feel like it would have been a headburst like one of those, but I would say action, adventure, sci-fi works out in my mind. I could see all that.
See, I definitely think the sci-fi thing kind of like applies. I don't know that action adventure applies because this isn't really there isn't that many action scenes in this. You have a little bit of an action scene when he fights Chef near the end of the movie. You have the scene where he shoots out the wall and it's like paper mache and he just kind of like heaves-ho his way through it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the wrestling match with the dude from Street Fighter. And that's kind of it as far as action is concerned.
Well, all the first part of the story when he gets to the island and he meets all the crazies, the chock full of nuts part, he's run. I know you're saying that's the shooting the wall part and jumping through, but I think that's on par. I mean, we got that. We've got some other parts where they're trying to find the president. He's in the train car for the Duke, which Isaac Hayes is the Duke. So they have that whole part.
Number one.
Yeah.
So, no, I mean, it's weird because for a movie that's heralded as one of the great action movies in a lot of ways, it just doesn't feel like when I think of a great action movie, I think of stuff like Die Hard or Commando or stuff where you're seeing a lot of things happening in short succession and it's not really, truthfully, it's not even really character driven or story based. And this movie feels very character driven, even though you don't really get a whole ton of development on the character of Snake Plissken. You just know that he's the less bad guy.
You actually get a lot of kind of lore building about Snake Plissken. Everybody,
sure,
I noticed when watching this, everybody knows who Snake Plissken is. Like they've been in this prison on this prison island the whole time. They all know who he is. And the thing that everybody says to him, what do they say to him when they meet him?
Aren't you dead?
Yeah, I thought you were dead.
Or aren't you supposed to be dead?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought you were dead. Aren't you supposed to be dead? Didn't you get, not didn't you get killed? That's asinine. But yeah, I mean, everybody says it to him. So while you kind of alluded to it earlier, there are a bunch of, I guess, deleted scenes, which I've never seen, that kind of give a little bit more backstory about Snake. They have a little bit of, they tell more about this.
10-minute. I didn't watch it because I didn't really feel the need to. It's like a 10-minute ordeal that you can find on YouTube if you want. If you just search Escape from New York, deleted intro, it comes up. And it is like a 10-minute video, which I assume, well, I think you were going to go into what it's about. So,
yeah, just about him robbing the Federal Reserve, because that's the thing. Like, I didn't understand, even just watching this again, he kind of shows up on the island because it's just kind of like a matter of right place at the right time that he's there, because he's getting sent to Manhattan Island because he got convicted of, robbing this bank. But they don't really say much about it when he first gets there. He just kind of walks in, everybody's staring at him. And, that's when they say, hey, we got this mission for you. We'll pardon you for all the bad shit that you've done in the United States. They mention that, and then they kind of go into the character about him, but they don't ever really go into detail about anything. And I feel like that builds this kind of lore, or it builds this feeling that that he's this badass. They don't have to show you that he's this badass, but they prove it with the world building just by things mentioned in passing even.
That's true, but I don't feel like they really develop him as a character. Like, you don't really know his motivations other than to not die at the end of this 22-hour run.
What else do you need?
You don't really know. Well, I guess you don't need much, but I don't know. You don't really get the impression that he's got any type of moral stance to his character. Like, everyone that he encounters, that tags along with him, pretty much dies in this movie, and he never is like, oh man, this person was really he never has any remorse about any of them dying along the way as he's trying to save Dr. Loomis, the president.
I think that he has a little bit of remorse. He feels bad when Brains and Maggie are at the end. I mean, he gives her a look like, if you stay here, you're going to die.
I didn't get the impression that he gave a shit if he stayed there and she died. It also would have been good to see the Duke of New York, or Isaac Hayes, or Chef, whatever we're calling him in this. It would be kind of cool to see a little bit more of how he, or why he is the Duke of New York in this. Like, what makes him so special compared to some of the other badasses roaming around the stateside New York. Like, he doesn't feel very developed as a character either.
He has chandeliers on the front of his car. That all
is
you
true.
need.
He has one of the coolest. He does have one of the better automobiles in the history of movie cars.
I thought it was really interesting. I kind of was reading stuff about this, that for Snake, the investors wanted Charles Bronson, or who was the other one?
Clint Eastwood.
No, I read Tommy Lee Jones. Who would
I heard Clint Eastwood.
A relative
Someone more seasoned
unknown.
is what
Tommy
they were
Lee Jones
for.
is at that point, he's done probably not much.
Well, at this point for Kurt Russell, all he had done
All the
was he
Disney
was
stuff.
Elvis and the Disney stuff. Yeah, he was Elvis for Carpenter, some Carpenter Elvis thing, which I didn't even know about. And all the Disney things. So this really took him out of being typecast as a Disney guy, which is good because I don't like to think of a world without Kurt Russell movies other than Disney movies.
I mean, would you say this is probably one of his defining roles?
I'd say, yeah, I think so, because I think so many of his other roles that come after this, whether it's the sequel to this movie or movies that he's in as some kind of badass character, I think it's built off kind of that casting and that almost like mythical like juju that he built around Snake Plissken. Like you could almost even look at a movie like Death Proof, which I know a lot of people don't like that movie, but a lot of that character, just that kind of dark, mysterious kind of broodingness that character has, it feels like a lot of that is built off how he played Snake Plissken to me. And I'm sure there's other ones that I'm not thinking of at the moment, but I don't think he would be, I mean, maybe he would have still done The Thing somewhere down the line, or maybe he would have done some of these other movies, but I don't think he would be the Hollywood action star that he became if it wasn't for this.
Yeah, I think there's so many roles that he's done that are almost like direct copies of this character. I mean, he doesn't have a whole lot of range.
Absolutely.
You know, so it's...
Absolutely.
You can't do Soldier
No.
without this film. I mean, he's just... No, but I feel like the big departure from this kind of character is probably Big Trouble in Little China is like the one character
absolutely.
where he's very different from Snake Plissken. But other than that, I think that this is like, if it weren't for this movie, you probably, well, like you said, you know, Elvis and Disney movies aside, you probably wouldn't have heard too much from Kurt Russell. So he becomes kind of like a Carpenter player at that point.
Well, there's certainly plenty of people who have been Disney players that have gone on to do tons of great stuff. But him getting picked up by Carpenter, I heard someone else explain or describe it. It's almost like when Tarantino forced the studio to let Travolta play in Pulp Fiction. It just almost redefined his career, like with that one role. And then all of a sudden he's Vincent Vega in different shades of, or different colors of suits for the foreseeable future. I don't know if it's quite the same because Travolta had like a whole career before he got like reborn as Vincent Vega.
But he's been reborn multiple times. So I don't know if it's
that too
necessarily the same.
No, I think there's some like similarities there, but I don't think it's quite the same level as like at this point for Kurt Russell. You're right. This is a springboard that really launches him into being able to do a whole bunch of different shit. Like you looking at this right now, he has 103 credits under his name as an actor. And that's not to say that he wouldn't have maybe a whole ton of like acting credits if he stuck with the Disney path, but would he have this like,
longevity?
Well, I guess longevity and like this whole variety of shit. Like just looking at his recent stuff, he has a Christmas movie, Guardians of the Galaxy, The Hateful Eight, some movie called Bone Tomahawk. I don't even know what that is.
I've seen it.
Any good?
Yeah, it's decent.
And then you throw in like Grindhouse and Sky High. So he's got kids movies, horror movies, the whole range of things where had this movie not been in there to kind of break that ice, who knows if he would have gotten even a quarter of that.
Yeah, I mean, this opened a lot of doors for him. And it's a perfect role. Like he is for him. I mean, he's like this tough guy, you know, he's like the tough guy's tough guy in this movie. He fits, I think, Snake Plissken being this guy who goes in, he's like a one-man wrecking crew for the most part, is a genre defining character type for all action movies to come since. I mean, if we didn't, I don't have a whole lot of insight on 70s action movies, but I feel like Snake Plissken is one of those characters that if we didn't have Snake Plissken, would we have like a Dom Toretto from Fast and Furious? I mean, just kind of like, would it be written in contracts that I don't get beat up? You know, I mean, as ridiculous and silly as that sounds, I wonder if that would even come.
Well, he's two things. He's one of the original anti-heroes. Like he's one of the original bad guys that you can genuinely root for. It's not like Michael Myers where he's the bad guy and you're rooting for him, but not really for any good reason. And he's also one of the first action stars that isn't like when I say it's not like a WWE sized human being running around beating up half the city. He's he's John McClane before John McClane was
John McClane.
Exactly. Except he's the bad guy in this, sort of. So he kind of sets two things that become very popular character types in this one role. And you can make the argument that he does it better than, I don't know. I have a soft spot for John McClane. John McClane might do the like skinny guy action hero better than Plissken does, but I don't know if there's a better anti-hero than Snake Plissken.
He's definitely not a good guy, but you root for him. I want to bring up one thing about height, and it's kind of related. Isaac Hayes in this movie is the Duke. And I always thought of Isaac Hayes as being this really tall guy. But in this movie, there's a scene where he's standing right next to Harry Dean Stanton, and they're about the same height. And I don't consider Harry Dean Stanton to be a tall guy. Harry Dean Stanton's like 5'8", and Isaac Hayes is just as tall, if not an inch taller. Like, they're not much different. It really it blew my mind a little bit. It warped my opinion of Isaac Hayes. I just imagine him to be this like 6'4" guy for some reason, like a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, I know Kareem's even taller, 6'11" or something like that, but I just pictured him to be much taller. When I saw that, I was like, holy shit, he's actually not even that tall.
I mean, he's 6 foot even, so he's,
I think that's bullshit. If you watch the scene where they're standing right next to each other, and I think it's one of the scenes in the building when like they're dressing up Donald Pleasence, the president, he's in that blonde wig. It's right around that scene, and they're standing right next to each other. There is no fucking way that they are 4 inches different.
You know that wig is Donald Pleasence's idea.
Oh, was it really?
Put him in the blonde wig. I guess so Carpenter was taking input from the actors, which I guess is something he did a lot, at least at that time. And the whole idea was that they were going to humiliate the president, which I'm not really sure how they would have done, because it's not like they were live
filming him or something.
Whatever they were. Right. But that was the idea, is that they were going to humiliate him. He goes, well, why don't you put me on a blonde wig? And that's how he ends up in that goofy wig.
That's probably just some kinks Pleasence has.
Maybe. I don't know.
Why don't you stick that thing up my ass? You insist.
We're going to have to isolate that just to use it for future episodes.
I edit this. That's not going in any isolation.
That's fair. I don't know. Do you have anything negative you might want to say or kind of think about this movie? Or is there any downside to this movie?
I feel like it is a tad, like a hair too long. I don't think this isn't one of my favorite movies. I just think for the time, it does a lot of great things. Like I said, it has that kind of video game connection. It feels like a game, much like we talked about the Warriors. With this, there's just something about it. It's kind of a little slow paced. I feel like in my mind, there's a lot more action. Like you said, you don't really feel it's necessarily an action movie. I do feel like it's a little bit of an action movie, but I feel like there could be a lot more. It does feel like some of the pacing is a little bit off. And I think a lot with John Carpenter, for better or for worse, he's very much a less is more kind of guy. So I feel like some of the scenes don't really work out, because not necessarily the scenes don't work out, but they don't really flow very well together because there's just so little to go off of. I mean, when we get to ratings, I'm really kind of teeter-tottering between a couple different ratings, just because the movie doesn't wow me. I mean, I like the movie. It has big time nostalgia vibes. It reminds me of, again, watching, WKBD or Channel 50, the movie, the Saturday afternoon movie or Sunday afternoon movie. You didn't have shit else to do, so you turned the TV on, and this was always playing. So I have a real soft spot for it, but I don't feel like it does anything great. While I do really like the Snake Plissken character, it's just not, it's not super dynamic. It's just it feels very one trick a lot of the time.
You kind of stole some of my thunder on that. It's kind of similar to where I was going to go, except I think it does do a lot of things really well. It's got memorable characters. It's got characters I like. It really is, in a lot of ways, a genre defining film, because so many things that came after it are, whether you want to call them direct copies or just totally influenced by this movie, it's a huge influential film. But for whatever reason, it's probably been at least a decade since I've watched this movie at this point. And it's just a really hard movie for me to kind of sit down and be like, I really want to watch Escape from New York again. I don't. It's weird because, again, I do like it. And I do like a lot of things about it. I do have plenty of things I could sing praises about it. But there's a lot of points on it where I'm just like, fucking shoot someone, Snake. Do something crazy, and maybe that's just me being spoiled by things like, Robert Rodriguez films and shit like that, where if you don't shoot someone every 5 minutes, like the movie's a failure. But here we are. You want to lead into hot dogs with that?
Man, this is really tough. Like I said, I've been kind of teeter-tottering. I know this is one of the classics, and I feel like it's one of the classics of 80s cinema, early 80s cinema, and it's one of the movies that it was really influential on a lot of things. So it's really hard. I have to grant it on its own merit, though. I really want to just give for this. I'll give it 7 hot dogs out of 11 heads on a spike. It's just, I do enjoy it. I think it's got a lot of great parts. I think some of the innovation that they do in special effects, the whole thing, there's like a whole scene in the chopper where it looks like it's wireframe and they just took a model and they put like neon strips of tape or whatever on all the edges. So you can't even tell that it's not CG. I mean, it looks like early CG. They kind of redefine, I don't know, not redefine, but they kind of do some things that are really different. They a lot of design choices. I like the kind of neo-future deal that they're going with, where it's 1981 and 88 crime's going to go out of control. By 97, it's just straight up nuts, and there's all this. It's practically apocalyptic at that point. The way that it's portrayed. I really enjoy all the themes of the movie. The ending kind of, I don't know, the ending kind of threw me for a loop, like with the tape. They're looking for this tape. The tape is the thing that's the most important. And when they get to the end, Snake's like, fuck it. You don't deserve this tape because all these people that died for you kind of deal. I understand it, but I had to kind of think about, like, why did he do that? Why did he withdraw? Why did he pull that away? Maybe that feeds into the anti-hero kind of thing. But I like a lot of parts about the movie. I like that it kind of has those video game elements. The scores, I really enjoyed the score, even though it is somewhat repetitive. Yeah, there's just something there's just like an intangible to this movie that makes me pull back my score a little bit. It's not, like you said, it's not something I could watch over and over. It's like I can watch this once and I can wait 5, 6, 7, 8 years and watch it again. It feels maybe we're spoiled. Maybe nowadays the action is too exciting. We're used to explosions all the time and shit's shaking, and on one hand you could complain about shit's happening so fast you can't even see it because it's so blurry. But on the other hand, this movie kind of feels like it goes a little bit too slow, like it could be sped up. There could be a little bit more explosions. While I like the movie, it's just, it's only a once in a while kind of thing for me. And I feel like that's why I'm hitting it 7 out of 11. I almost went 6.5. So I was even thinking a little bit lower on the scale, but I think my final will be 7 out of 11.
Well, we're pretty close in that range because I'm going 6.5 hot dogs out of 10 car chandeliers. It's, again, this movie has so many good things going for it. It's all praises to John Carpenter. We say that, or I say that all the time. Like, it's not something I'm going to say. There's really not much I can say about it that makes it like objectively bad. And there's so many things I could say about it that I like. Again, I like the characters, I like the actors, I like the mood of the movie, the lighting, all that stuff. It's just not enjoyable for me to sit down and watch again. And for me, if I'm gonna put a movie in higher on the hot dog scale, like I'd say 7.5 and up, I want rewatchability. I want to, even if it's bad rewatchability, if it's a movie like Raw Deal or something where I know this movie is bad, but I'm entertained by it because of these horrible car chases or whatever it is. I want something that I can kind of put back on, and even if it's just mindlessly have it on and kind of know what's going on, that has merit to it. Where although this movie is effectively better in every aspect than Raw Deal, just as a comparison, it's just not as enjoyable to watch, and that's why I can't go much higher than 6.5 out of 10 on it.
Yeah, I feel like this is just a movie where I want to like it a lot more. And I feel like my memory is very much like it betrays me on this kind of movie, because I feel like, when we talked about watching this, it was very much let's definitely watch it. And then you mentioned to me in text, like, oh man, it took me a couple tries to get through this. And for me, I don't want to say it gave me like a lot of watch checking moments, but I can tell you it was more of like, okay, I've seen this. It's okay. Can we just get through it? Is it almost over? It wasn't like it was bad. Yeah. Objection. There was nothing
right.
bad going on. It was just like, all right, I know what's going to happen. it's the rewatchability. Like you said, I feel like if it's going to get much past 7.5, I think is a really good threshold, because I feel like we grade a little lower than I think, you look on Metacritic or something, but this gets pretty good ratings.
It's not that much. I mean, I still have the IMDb pulled up. It's at 7.1 on IMDb. So we're we're right in the range for them. What is it on not that this is a, accurate thing, the tomato meter. So
the thermometer.
Come on, I shouldn't have to fill this much in. It's a lot of escape from movies, apparently. So it's better on there. So the critic score is 86 on the tomato meters. The audience score is 77. So
what's the
I guess it's more popular on there. 86.
Wow.
Which I can understand that because it is such an influential film in a lot of ways. But I still feel like that's really high for a movie that is hard to rewatch. Or not hard, but not enjoyable to rewatch, I guess.
Right. I feel like this isn't a movie that you could rewatch and you're going to catch a whole lot more. It's like the one time I see it, okay, I get the gist of it. There's not a lot of nuance to it. It's very black and white. There's not a lot that's like, oh man, why did he do that? Like, oh, what led him to that decision? It's like, no, I just need to get the fuck out of here. Like, my head's going to explode if I don't get out of here. I got to get out of here. And there's not really that much tension to that. There is so much of the movie that's concentrated on this. They keep having him look at the watch, or the big, the big watch band thing he has. And there's so much of the movie that he's looking at it, and it's like 17
it's like
hours.
The Apple Watch from hell.
Yeah, 16 hours, 15 hours. But then all of a sudden it's like 3 hours. And then it's 40 minutes. It feels like there even needs to just be a little bit more tension. It's like there's not really...
Which is a weird thing to say about a Carpenter movie, because he's like the master of creating tension where there should be no tension. And he's got a little bit of that in here, but it's not... I mean, and again, he's got a lot of movies under his belt at this point when this comes out. It's not like you're watching this. I mean, maybe in 1981 or whenever this came out, people were, but I never found myself watching this on the edge of my seat. Like, oh no, is Snake going to escape this? Like, I definitely never felt it this time, having seen this, a handful of times before. And I don't remember feeling that way at any point watching this movie. I mean, again, I don't really reminisce like, did I think Snake was going to get out of this one? It just doesn't seem like it ever really hit a point where it's like, it felt like Snake was really going to lose the movie.
I think about that a lot. Sometimes I think like, am I just jaded movie watcher at this point? I've seen so many movies. I've seen so much stuff.
Absolutely.
And you watch it and you're like, well, they're going to get out of it. I mean, there's never a movie, or not very many movies, especially American movies, where the good guy bites it at the end and he dies and, oh shit, we're all fucked. It's usually, there's always that silver lining. So, but on the other hand, there are movies
dumb, like, oh, he had a baby.
Yeah. There are movies, like some horror movies you watch are like, how are they going to get out of this? I think horror, that's what really, why horror movies appeal to me, is that the first time you watch it, you don't know who's going to make it. The bad guy's probably going to bite it at some point, but you don't know who's going to make it out of the group.
Yeah. And that is, well, there's a lot of things about horror to like that outside of the obvious with it, but it does leave a little more the imagination, who's going to get what, when. And with horror, there's a lot more times where you think who's going to be your end character, and then they get off somewhere in the middle, and you're like, well, shit, now I have to realign my whole...
Yeah.
It's almost like a puzzle that you have to put together while watching it.
I have to rethink this strategy.
And I guess that could be a thing I'm sure that's a thing in some other genres, but it doesn't seem as... I don't know if well thought out's the right word, because there's certainly plenty of movies in the horror genre that are not that well thought out, but still entertaining on that aspect. But I guess it doesn't feel like the stakes are as high in action movies. It just feels more like a video. Maybe that's it. Maybe we're just desensitized to it because of video gaming culture and all that, and all the other action movie boom that came up between the late 80s and the 90s, where you always know good guy's going to win, bad guy's going to get shot or get away for the sequel.
Well, the other thing I think is, for me, is that with the way that movies are billed these days, you see all the stars across on the poster or whatever, and who's going to be the star of the movie. We see a movie, Jurassic Park's coming out. We know Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard is going to be, they're the top billed people. There are no risks. Those top billed people generally make it through the whole thing, especially action movies. Like they are so, because they want to franchise things, they want to make sequels and make like 87 different versions of this movie. They don't want to off a star, or a star doesn't want to get offed, or they don't want to sign into the project if they can make a shit ton more money because they'll be in all the sequels or make a spin-off of it. So as much as, I don't know, going on a little bit of a tangent, as much as I maybe bemoan Fast and Furious, like at least they take risks where people die and they might come back, but they come back as the same character, but as a spin-off. And that's a good way to kind of do it so people can all make their money. Maybe that's what we need to see a little bit more of. The head dude, if we're going to watch, I don't know, I hate to use Chris Pratt as an example, but for some reason he seems like he's in everything and he's the only one I can think of right now. But if you see Chris Pratt on a movie poster, he's not going to die. He's going to make it. Maybe we need one of those characters to bite the bullet and a lesser character to take over the reins to kind of throw us for a loop in some of these movies, because it's,
well, even when they tried to do, well, I guess they didn't try to do that, but they pulled off Chris Pratt in the Avenger movie, and then they brought him back like one movie later, which is when I started not liking Marvel movies anymore, because, all right, so no one dies and nothing's final, so there's really no consequences to anything in this whole fucking universe, so why do I keep watching?
Well, it's funny because before I came on here, I was editing the episode about Cobra Kai, and we said that there's no consequences. Like people get hurt, but they just come right back. There's no lasting consequence. Like you're going to see that character again, and maybe it'd be nice. I mean, as I don't know, sadistic as this sounds, it'd be nice to see some of these characters die once in a while, so then they don't come back.
Not to go on too much of a Cobra Kai tangent, because we already did that, but I mean, you watch a guy get sliced up with a sword in that show, and at the end of that episode, he's just like, hey, thumbs up.
Yeah, he walks out, he's staggering a little bit. Oh, I got a Band-Aid on my leg. I'm good.
Right. Not to mention the fact that they're like drinking heavily and like borderline alcohol poisoning before that, so he's going to bleed out quicker, like in reality.
Technicalities, anyway, John, technicalities.
We're digressing. This is not the Cobra Kai episode. That episode already happened. Maybe we'll do another one when there's another season of that. So, you got anything else you want to add on Snake Plissken and the magical escape from New York, but not the magical escape from Los Angeles?
No.
Are we going to do an episode about Escape from Los Angeles? Because that movie's quite a bit wacky. It's almost like they've heard the criticism, like, from this first one. Like, well, let's just amp it up to like 11 and see what happens.
I've never seen it, and I just remember the promos on MTV and stuff, and they showed the surfing part where it was like clearly CGI, and I need to see the movie now.
Okay, well, we can do that somewhere down the line. I've only seen it once, but it reminded me a lot of that Schumacher era Batman type effects, which I kind of have a soft spot for that, but all right. You got anything you want to add? I think I already said that. Okay. Well, let's wrap it up here. Again, this is the Dewey Pod Monster podcast. You can follow us on our website is crap.town. You can find us on all kinds of social media networks. If you're still on Twitter after, that guy from Tesla bought it, we're on there. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, sort of. Whatever. We're on there. It's at Dewey Pod Monster all over the place. Leave us feedback, rate, review, share the show, all that good shit. We would appreciate it. Sean, what do you got going on?
You can find me on the YouTubes at youtube.drafttherapy.com. You can find me on all the social medias at Draft Therapy. If you have a movie you want us to talk about, if you have a hankering for a movie that you want us to review, leave us some feedback on one of the social medias. We're always looking for feedback and new movies to watch. If you think there's a genre that we've been neglecting, or maybe a genre you think we should focus on, let us know that stuff too.
We do have one request that we'll get to in the not too distant future. That person's already aware that's a little bit of a backlog right now, but that's okay. We're going to make it happen because, damn it, we're here for you. I think that's all we got, though. So unless we have something else, which we don't, I've already said that 3 times now because I'm a moron. Have a good week. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers. You fucking moron, John. Moron. I kind of like that. It looks like I'm recording on some weird variant of Doom.
That would be really old.
Yeah, well, that's what this is. That's the joke.
Ha! Ha! That was my Alf
Yeah.
laugh for you. Ha! Willie!
You gonna eat a cat?
Gordon Shumway. That's my name.
Hmm.
Don't wear it out.
Is that an Elf reference? I don't watch
Alf?
Elf. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
Gordon.
haven't watched Elf since it was on whatever channel it was on.
Gordon Shumway is his name.
Okay.
His
I'll
name
take your word for
is
it.
Gordon Shumway.